Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're going to have a look at the weather next week, 10 days for today's first video. This will take us into the start of May. So we had all of the hot weather, of course, last week, our early taste of summer. It's gone now, and we've been predicting that it will go quite quickly. It has. We're in a much cooler airflow now, and we're going to be staying in that cooler airflow through for the rest of April. There's no sign of a return of hot weather in April. In fact, it's going to be getting more unsettled as well in the week ahead. So rather cool and unsettled really is going to close out April. And then as we go into May, probably keeping it quite unsettled even then as well. So I'll tell you for everything that's going on in a second. Just say that today's second video coming up this evening, we'll be having a look at the May Day Bank Holiday weekend. We started the updates for the May Day Bank Holiday weekend on Saturday evening. Our second update for May Day Bank Holiday will be coming up for you this evening around 7 o'clock. So let's get on with the main video though today. I'm going to start off having a look at central England temperature, because we've moved up to 10 degrees now. We're actually standing provisionally at 10.1 in the CT region, an anomaly of over 2.5 degrees above average, so very warm April now. Provisional up to the 22nd. I think that's about as high as it's going to get. I don't think you're going to get any higher than that, and in fact it'll probably tick down a little bit over this final week of the month. So I wouldn't expect to collapse, but it will probably edge back down. I think we'll finish up somewhere in the 9s for this April. So it will be a significantly warmer than average April, most definitely. But I don't think we'll keep it at that sort of level in the 10s. I think we will move down to somewhere between around 8 and 9. Or I should say 9 and 10 degrees Celsius for the CET. So it will be a substantially warmer than average month, though, turning into a very strange year, because January was also quite warm, but then February and March were both cold. So really topsy-turvy at the moment in terms of trading these warmer and colder than average months. So we'll have a look at the 500mm high denominator flow charts for the next week's 10 days from the Penn State University website. Next, we've got the ECMDF here on the top. The GFS, which I'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500mm bars, 8 feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure, being moved around by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. These are the mean flow charts for 7 to 10 day time. 7 to 10 days time, so it takes us into the first days of May. What the ECMDF is showing is a ridge out to the west of the country, and also a trough down to the south and up to the north. So it's rather a messy pattern, but probably doing something a bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. So rather changeable, rather unsettled, and bringing the air in from the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean means that it won't be particularly warm. Actually, probably quite cool as we're closing out April going into May. Now, the GFS is rather different. It's very different, actually, with a deep trough being centred almost over the UK and to the west of Europe. This ridge is much further back in the middle part of the Atlantic, and so with this one, the flow and the jet is going rather like that. So we are still pushing the jet stream to our south, but it's much deeper with the trough, so therefore it's a much more unsettled type situation as we're going into the end of April and the start of May. So the ECM is rather changeable, yes, but not desperately unsettled. But the GFS looks very unsettled there, and cool as well as we're going into the opening days of May. GFS ensembles next. These are the upper air temperature ensembles for Manchester today. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Manchester. We're still a little bit above average right now. We're still just about hanging on to some warmth, but really the temperatures are downhill now through the rest of the week, going below the red line, going below the 30-year temperature average for time later on this week, and then just hovering very close to the 30-year temperature average as we're going into the first week of May. Also turning more unsettled as well, but precipitation spikes are coming back, so there's going to be plenty of rainfall over the next few days, and that continues into weekend and continues into next week as well. Looks a much cooler and much more unsettled setup as we're going into the closing days of the month. Surface temperatures look like that for Manchester, so this is 10 degrees just here. We're still a bit above 10 degrees, somewhere in the mid-teens Celsius, but the temperatures will be moving downwards over the next few days, so barely above 10 degrees as we get through to the end of the week. Then maybe recovering slightly as we're going through the first week of May, but overall nothing to get particularly excited about. Certainly not going back to the level of warmth which would be 2 or above 20 degrees Celsius just there that we had through the through last week. So no sign that we go back to anything particularly warm this side of May, and probably into the first week of May also. Temperature anomalies for the week ahead then are coming out average to a little bit cooler than average from the 23rd of April through to the 1st of May. So this is a cooler end to April most definitely. And precipitation wise, we're also coming out a little bit wetter than average. So it's not going to be a particularly cool week from the 23rd of April through to the 1st of May. We're coming out a bit wetter than average and a bit cooler than average. Obviously a big change on what we had last week. So this is how the GFS is looking for Friday. Low pressure is close to the country. You can expect showers or longer spells of rain really into the end of the week and also the weekend. Low pressure never all that far away. The exact tract of these areas of low pressure still to be determined. I mean, this one that we have over the weekend, we find the low pressure is just to our southwest on Saturday, but then by Sunday the low pressure is more to the southeast. So obviously this could be bringing some very wet weather across southern parts of the country over the weekend. In the north it would be more sort of showery, but the exact position of these areas of low pressure still a little bit up in the air, if you pardon the pun. We go through to next week and low pressure continues to be dominant. This time it's off the coast of East Anglia, pulling in this east to northeasterly wind, which is bound to feel quite chilly, I would have thought. And when we go up to day 10, still keeping it unsettled. In fact, it's turning more unsettled, really. You've got this area of low pressure developing around Ireland on the 22nd of May, on the 2nd of May, I should say, which is bringing quite a lot of wet and windy weather into the west. That's how we look at day 10, which is Thursday, the 3rd of May, and it looks very unsettled indeed. Low pressure just to our southwest, getting a little bit of ridging developing in the middle of the Atlantic as well. Remember, the ZF isn't as deep with this area of low pressure. We saw that on the height anomaly flow charts. It's not quite as intense with that area of low pressure around day 9 and 10 with the ECM. But it does look very unsettled, very changeable anyway for the rest of April and into the start of May too. We go deeper into the first week of May and we start to pull in these easterly winds once again with more low pressure close to the country, this time generally to the south and southeast, so showers or longer spells of rain continuing. As we go up towards the end of the GFS, there may be some signs of a little bit of ridging starting to take place, so possibly turning a bit drier and warmer then into the second week of May, but it is to be determined. Finally, the ECF looking like this, so the end of the week is looking unsettled, and that continues into the weekend as well. Low pressure never all that far away, so at the very least there'll be showers, if not some longer spells of rain. That's how things look in a week's time. Monday, the 30th of April. We end April on quite a wet note, I would have thought, in the southeast, with this little area of low pressure off the East Anglian coast. And then we run up towards day 10, and we possibly start to get a little bit of influence from the Azores high bank. Just a bit of a transient ridge being thrown up across the country. Remember, at this point, the GFS is developing that dartboard area of low pressure. So days 8, 9 and 10, very different between the ECMWF and the GFS models. But even if we do get this little bit of a ridge building up by day 10 that the ECM is showing, I think that looks quite transient. It's not going to be sustained, I wouldn't have thought. We would expect this area of low pressure just here to roll in over the top with its weather fronts, and so the ridge would pull back into the middle of the Atlantic, and we generally turn quite unsettled a little bit after day 10 once again. So I think we are in for an unsettled end to April. It's been a very warm month so far, but we are going to see the temperature edging down a little bit. Just generally rather cool, rather unsettled for the final week of April. This is likely to continue into the opening days of May. How unsettled it gets is a little bit uncertain. The GFS looks very, very unsettled indeed. The ECM is not quite as bad as that, but generally it's a cool and unsettled into April, and we could probably expect this to last into, at the very least, the first days of May as well. So that's it for today's first video. We'll be back at 7 o'clock this evening with a look at the May Day Bank Holiday weekend. So come back for that, see what it's showing for update number 2. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.